we partied out in the middle of cornfields.
Oh my gosh, yes. Hello, Midwest teens.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we did.
At the pond.
Or at, I'm not going to say his name, but their farm. That's where you went. I mean, there are a lot of things that we did that, looking back, it was dangerous and dumb, but every generation has that.
Welcome to the Empty Nest Happy Hour podcast, where it's always happy hour because the nest is empty.
Relax your shoulders, loosen your grip, pour yourself a drink. It's time for the Empty Nest Happy Hour, a hilarious weekly podcast exploring midlife, parenting, empty nesting, women's rights, pop culture, whatever. You all know, you listeners, I don't know how many listeners we have, but we have a lot of followers now on our various social media. And you know that you don't have to be middle-aged empty nester Midwest mom ladies like us to join this happy hour. Whoever you are and whatever's happening in your life, thank you for being part of our community and taking a little break to laugh through it with us. And as we always tell you, everything we say here is our truth now. We're not experts on anything, but we have a lot to say about everything. Danielle, hit us with the social media.
We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Empty Nest Happy Hour. And our website is emptynesthappyhour.com. Our email address is info@emptynesthappyhour.com. So easy to find us at Empty Nest Happy Hour, and you should find us no problem.
And last week, a little follow up on last week, we challenged you to bring us up to 200 Instagram followers by February 1st.
Yes.
And last I checked today, we're at 236.
We are.
So welcome to those of you who are following us on Instagram and listening to the podcast.
Yep.
We hope that you're doing both. And tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell everybody that we're here.
We are here. And we've got all kinds of fun things coming up. Like hopefully if you listened to our review of Baby Girl last week, we had a lot to say about that. And I'm glad that we did.
Yes, I am glad too. I feel like we filled a niche out there. There was a lot of press about Baby Girl, and I do want to direct, if you enjoyed our discussion last week, you will really like an article by Caitlin Flanagan in the newest, or it's on the Atlantic website. And she has very similar thoughts about Baby Girl, and you can listen to it. It's 8 minutes to listen to, so it's good. She's like, what? Do you want to tell a little bit about? We did some reels promoting our podcast and promoting that episode specifically, where we talked a little bit about sex. What happened with that?
So, as anybody has to do now, you have to market on social media, and because of our reel using the words erotic thriller, we got rejected because we violated the nudity and sexual content.
We didn't violate
policy.
Any nudity.
No.
There's no nudity on this podcast, everyone. That's going to be a hard no. Don't ever tune in here for nudity because it's not going to happen. But yes, we are going to talk about sex a little bit. And yes, we are middle-aged ladies. So sorry, go ahead, ban us, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I did put in for an override, and they did override it pretty quick. I think it was within 10 minutes, and they say 2 days. So I think they were like, oh, no, these ladies are fine.
No,
this is
great.
not our issue.
Wow, yeah. Of all the things that are out there in social media.
Yeah, we got violated for using the term erotic thriller, and you used like quotation marks.
Yes, I did.
Yep.
I did. Yeah. Well, you can't see that anyway.
Yeah.
So, yes. So if you missed last week, go back and listen to it. It's an interesting analysis of women in film and women's sexuality, middle-aged women's sexuality in film. So anyway, who are we?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm Danielle.
And I'm Amy.
And we are still in January, so I have another mocktail if you are participating in Dry January, which we're going to get into a little bit deeper. But this week, it's a blueberry thyme mocktail. You take a handful of blueberries and a strand of thyme, and you kind of muddle them together. Add a half a teaspoon of honey, half a lemon juiced, squeeze and shake that all together, and then add 4 ounces of coconut water. And it's nice and refreshing.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
But we're just drinking water tonight.
Yeah, we are. But we wanted to offer
Yeah.
different options. Oh, I thought that was a nice winter one because
Mhm.
since it's, 8 degrees out here.
Is it even 8?
I think tomorrow it's supposed to wake up and it's going to be in the negatives. So it's going to be chilly. Yeah. It's winter. It's January.
I have to go to a high school career day tomorrow. I'm hoping that they cancel school because it's so cold.
Gosh. I know, just as when we're getting back. It's like,
Right.
just kidding. It's
Well,
too
that
cold.
happens. It always
Yeah.
happens this time of year. I mean, those kids standing at the bus stop at 7:30 in the morning. Maybe
Yeah.
they'll cancel. Like, I'm going to stay up and watch local news tonight to see if they're going to
See if they're
cancel
gonna
my
cancel?
high school career day.
That's great. As the kids are walking in high school in shorts
Right.
and no coats
Right.
anyways.
Right. So, speaking of going back to school, a little empty nest thing. It hit me on Monday when my daughter Emma called. Monday was her last first day of school.
It's wild. Ricky's last first day is next Tuesday.
Yeah.
That went really fast.
Yeah.
I remember thinking how many years
Right.
when they were going, especially kindergarten, right? And how many first days there would be. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
the last one is here.
The last first day.
Yeah.
I mean, because both of them are committed to not doing grad school at this point. We'll
Yeah.
see. But that doesn't even count. Your
don't
first
think
day
so
of
either.
grad school is different. But wow. I mean, I am not an emotional person about this, but that kind of got me a little bit. Like,
Yeah,
that's an era we're coming to the end of.
I know.
And
They're
then-
like real adults.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
when they were talking with us in November about, it
Yeah.
still was like they were our
Right.
kids. But they're really going to be adults now.
Right. Right.
And what those implications mean.
Ugh.
Oh,
I had to figure out when graduation was and put that in my calendar too, so I don't miss that.
Right. Ours is Mother's Day. It's always Mother's Day here.
I think ours is that weekend.
March 11th, I
May.
think is, or May 11th, I mean.
Yeah,
not
so
March.
her graduation is like May 9th, May 10th, depending on, she's in
Yep.
like 2 different schools, so I don't know how it all works.
Yeah, that same weekend.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
It's really going to be here really fast.
Are we going to have a graduation party for them?
We should probably have it together, don't
We
you think?
should.
Yeah, I think so. Because
Yeah.
they didn't have a high school
No, they
graduation
didn't.
party because it was COVID.
No. And we had a great one for Bess's high school graduation. If you listen to the podcast all the way back then, I got real drunk. It was not dry May. Let's talk about that.
Okay. I like it because then we can celebrate together.
Yes.
And it can be as much for us as it is
Right.
for them.
Right.
True empty nesters living through our children.
Right. We might even have a graduation party and an after party.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Okay.
I like that idea.
All right. We need to start planning now.
And if you have ideas for
Yes.
after party, like adult,
Right.
congratulations, you got your kids through their bachelors. We'd love to hear
We
your
would
ideas.
love to hear
too.
that. You can send us an email, and we did challenge you last week. If you send us an email, we will read it on the air, whatever you write. So it's
So
a
watch
challenge.
yourself.
It's still out there. All right. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, we are going to talk a little bit again about dry January, but in a little bit of a different take. We sort of deep dived into it. I mentioned I'm doing dry January. I've done it for a while. I do it because I like to, this is very Gen X of me to say this, but I like to lose weight this time of year.
Mhm.
And it's really easy to do when you're not out and eating bad things and drinking and
Well, and this is the time of year where I feel like it's very easy to like overindulge because you're cold, you're
Yep.
tired, you don't want to move. And so I mean, I know a number of times I've been out on a Friday night this time of year and you're just like, oh, hell, I got nothing else to do.
right? I guess I'm just going to have another.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can do that in February.
Okay, perfect. Right? 'Cause the days are getting longer. I noticed
Right.
it was still a little bit light out, still at
Yeah.
like 5:10.
Oh,
And it's a rough time of year.
It
It
is.
is for everybody.
but within a month, literally within 5 weeks from now, we will be in a place where it will be on the upswing. We've got about
Exactly.
5 weeks of this, and then we'll be okay. We'll be okay anyway, but
Right, but we'll be
yeah.
coming out and
Yep.
heading towards spring,
Yep.
which is always a good thing,
Yay.
which means that boat season is around the corner.
Yeah. And swimming pool and
Yes, exactly.
and summer break.
So, we did take a look at some of the Surgeon General just came out with their warning about alcohol use and how
Mhm.
it causes cancer. I don't think that's a new thing, but they're considering putting warning labels now, just like tobacco, on alcohol,
Mhm.
which is a whole increased and elevated level of warning, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
And so we looked into some of the things that alcohol does with middle age.
Mhm.
Um, you sent a really great New York Times article that I thought was really good, and we kind of dug into that a little bit. I, in all fairness, I'm not going to not drink.
Right.
I'm not an advocate of alcoholism by any means.
Right. Right.
We are professional women that have to go to work and
Right.
live our lives. We are not alcoholics in the least.
No. Thank goodness. I
Yeah.
mean, we haven't had to deal with that. We are people who like to drink, but we are moderate
Yes,
drinkers.
exactly. Exactly. And in December, November, December, it gets pretty wet.
Mhm.
If we're doing dry now, it gets pretty wet. So that's why that whole dry January thing started. Like, how do we reset? So, anyways, we kind of looked at some of the effects of alcohol and what it does. I think that there were a couple of things that they talked about that middle-aged drinking is on the rise.
Middle-aged women
Middle-aged women,
binge drinking are
yes.
the biggest increase of. I mean, why do we think that is?
Well, there were a couple of things in that article. They talked about because we're in the sandwich generation,
Mhm.
right? We are also having incredible demands on our work.
Mhm.
And that there is a historic level of loneliness that is
Mhm.
also creeping in. Those were the three that article referenced. And I think that
Mhm.
that's right.
I think also our generation, which is middle-aged women, have grown up drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, we've always, I don't know everyone, but
Yeah,
my peers, we've always drunk socially since high
exactly.
school, college. I mean, it's just something that we do. It's a community. It's one of the things we do as a group together.
Right. Let's go out and grab a drink.
Right.
It's really easy to do that. And it's become, I see things like, why did the wine mom become so
Right.
popular and the memes become so big? And I think that's true, that it has definitely exploded over the past probably decade,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit more than
Mhm.
that wine moms are a fun, cool thing to do instead of like, wait, maybe we should think about this. But from a cultural perspective, drinking and alcohol is part of our social life.
Right.
And right, we can talk about other substances, but that is not necessarily, I don't think, as prevalent in the middle-aged women world as maybe our kids that are of age to use things that are not banned anymore, right? So
Right. So weed is legal in
weed is
Illinois.
legal. Yep.
And I think that there is a correlation between, I think younger people are drinking less, and I think that that's because they have other substances that they can use to get the same effects.
Right. And they just don't drink as much as we used to. It's not part of their culture like it was part of our culture growing up.
Right. And I don't think that it was good the way it was part of my culture
No.
growing up, and not growing up, but certainly in college. When I look back at the way I drank in college, that was not good.
No.
No.
Well, but that was what you did. You just went
Right.
out and you
Right.
did tons of shots.
Right.
In high school, my goodness, I was the driver. I was terrified to drink because my dad was always awake. I was the goody two shoes
Yeah.
driver, but we partied out in the middle of cornfields.
Oh my gosh, yes. Hello, Midwest teens.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
At the pond.
Or I'm not going to say his name, but their farm, that's where you went.
Exactly.
And part of it was, his parents knew who was there. They kept everybody there. It was like, if you're going to drink, go there because everybody knows you're safe there and
Yeah.
stay there. I mean, there are a lot of things that we did that looking back, it was dangerous and dumb, but every generation has that. When you get
Agreed.
to be an adult, you look back and go, that was dangerous
Dumb.
and dumb and I
Yeah.
shouldn't have done that. But I think that, that was what we did.
Mhm. Right, and that was very much an 80s,
Yeah.
early 90s kind of thing, right? That
Yeah.
was part of our culture. So I think it has continued. Um, there was a junior league movement it was started in the 70s, but it really kicked off in the 80s. It was a 3-year campaign by all the junior leagues called Woman to Woman that was talking about alcohol abuse in women,
Oh, really?
and that was a major thing at that time, and I
Interesting.
wonder if that's it's just a continuation of this.
Yeah.
It maybe had dipped for a while because of whatever reason, and it
Yeah.
seems to be on the rise again.
It's very interesting. One of the articles that we read talks about the women's temperance movement from was it the 1800s?
Yeah,
Yeah, because it was, or 1900s, because that's what gave us prohibition, and how women have always sort of been on the forefront of whether people should be drinking or not, or and then you think about Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which made huge,
yeah,
huge impact on the way people thought about drinking and driving. Like
absolutely.
before Mothers Against Drinking and Driving, people didn't really think about those two things together. You just drank and got in a car.
Right.
And
I actually found a news clip as I was doing
yeah,
research for this, and it was when the law was passed that you cannot drink and
yeah,
drive, and it was people were like, "What's next? Now they're making us wear seatbelts. What's next? They're gonna
right,
continue taking away," and just how that conversation has changed so much.
right, right. It's very interesting. Well, I want to talk about a little bit the community aspect of it because I think
Yeah.
that that's a thing that is changing. So, drinking is a social activity mostly. And I think part of the reason that we're seeing drinking, especially in younger people, on the decline is because they're not as social.
I think that that's absolutely correct.
They're not, I mean, I don't know. We went out every night when I was in college, and I don't think that's the way it is so much anymore.
No. If you read The Anxious Generation, that book that came out last year, they talk a lot about how, right, the screens have changed the way that kids
Yeah.
socialize. And so they think they are socializing through their devices.
But that's
It's not the
virtual.
same
Right.
as face to face,
Right.
but that's their world.
Right.
So maybe the addiction has switched from,
Yeah.
I don't want to say again, we're not alcoholics,
Right.
but
No, no, no. And there's a difference between drinking and addiction,
yes,
right? And
yeah,
we're talking about social drinking that is within the norms
yes,
of
exactly.
society
Yep.
and that is controlled, like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think that because weed is so prevalent too, and it can be a very solitary
Hmm.
activity. I don't think there's the stigma about popping a gummy on your own at home when you're just watching whatever that there is about pouring yourself a glass of wine or a stiff bourbon or whatever. I think that that's different. And I think that's generational too. My parents came home from work every night and had a glass of wine or a
Right.
drink or whatever. And that was just part of the way that, they got through the day.
Right, exactly.
But
It was a transition from
right,
workday
right,
to
right, and that was
at
healthy,
home.
and that's what I
Mhm.
saw growing up, and I think that, aside from college shenanigans, which you just do things excessively because you are testing your limits,
Exactly.
I saw healthy drinking. But anyway, it's all very interesting.
It is. And so I looked at some of the things that they talked about. So there were so many things that were part of this. And besides the cancer piece of it, there's the high blood pressure, the high blood sugar, the weight gain, which we can go. Maybe we'll save this for another one. And what weight and doctor visits
Oh,
actually
yeah.
the
Oh, sure.
stigma around it. Not losing weight doesn't cure everything, and actually there are things you need to look at other than just saying you need to lose weight, but that's a whole nother
Yeah.
topic. But that is part of it, and that there is health benefits to that increased weight. But there's also other things that were like cognitive
Mm-hmm.
issues that come from that. So I did a little dive into some of the things that happen when you quit. So like dry January.
Mm-hmm.
So the first few days, obviously, they talk about, not obviously, but you go into actual real REM state. I think that for perimenopausal women, sometimes we have a hard time sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So you throw even one glass of wine in there. I know
Mm-hmm.
I can tell the difference.
Me too.
You're not sleeping well,
Yeah.
or you wake up sweating where you don't if you haven't had a drop of alcohol.
Right. And that does not count for sweaty January when you have night
No,
sweats don't count.
correct. Within a week, your liver is already starting to rebound. I mean, that it goes really fast. It's kind of, and that was part of the reason why the dry January started, because it was like, let's get your liver back to health, at
Mm-hmm.
least just for 1 month. Um, Within a month, you start actually seeing differences. So better skin because you're actually more hydrated. There probably is a little bit of weight loss because of the calories. It depends on
Mm-hmm.
how much
Mm-hmm.
you are taking in. And don't swap the sugar from a glass of wine with a
Yeah.
pint of ice cream, because
Yeah.
that's really, sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
And then, like, after a year, your risk of cancer is completely leveled off. So if you go a whole year without any alcohol, your cancer risk goes down and your level, and it's fascinating what the carcinogens of alcohol mean. Now, I am curious if European alcohol has the same effect as
Yeah.
what American alcohol has. Is it wine that is doing this to us because of the preservatives? Is it the alcohol with other preservatives? Or is it,
Wow. That's
I
interesting.
didn't look at that and I didn't think about it till right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Because they drink.
It's very different.
Yeah.
And like, if you have wine during the day, there's not the same level of um, hangover the next
Mm-hmm.
day, or
Mm-hmm.
even the effects in the middle of the night that you
Mm-hmm.
get when I'm, at least maybe because we're traveling, but
Mm-hmm.
even still, it is very different effect.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Do you think as you've gotten older, you are less able to tolerate?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Right. Sometimes I still like to try to go
Yeah,
out
me
like I was
too.
25, but
Yeah.
then I'm in bed for 3 days,
Yes.
or I'm like really struggling for 3 days.
Yeah. I used to be a gin and tonic girl. And then right around, let's see, this would have been about 5, 7 years ago. I went to a party and drank way too many gin and tonics and really was out the entire next day, like
Yeah.
miserable. I went a year without drinking gin and tonics
Oh
because I
boy.
was like, this is not a good thing. Now, I I I can tolerate it again. I just know my limits, but I had never had that. I never had a hangover when I was like when I would drink myself
Right. Like we did when we
in
binged
college.
in college. Mhm.
Never had a hangover. But when I got into my 40s, like I used to be able why am I'm so proud of this. I used to be able to have 2 glasses of wine and then no, I'm sorry, 2 mixed drinks and 2 glasses of wine,
And you were
like,
fine.
with a dinner.
Yeah,
You'd have a mixed drink at cocktail hour and
sure.
then another one and then 2 glasses of wine with dinner. No problem at all. No way in the world could I do that now.
Yeah.
Like,
Your body just
yeah,
metabolizes things
yeah,
different, and it just doesn't work the same as it
yeah,
did.
yeah, and
And
that's okay.
the sleep thing too,
Right.
right? Because we have to get up at a certain time and we're not sleeping great anyways, so it's disrupting sleep, and I think that that is definitely something that
Yeah,
affects the middle age piece, and probably older,
yeah,
than it does when you're in your 20s and can fall asleep anywhere.
yeah. I wonder if I'm sure the differences, are noticeable between men and women too. Like,
Probably.
we
Yep.
probably metabolize differently than they do, and they don't have if you're a middle-aged guy, I don't know that there is actual male menopause that, eh I think that's a myth, but,
Right. I
um
think there's hormone changes,
there's
right?
hormone changes, but I don't think it's anything like what we have
Right,
to deal
right,
with.
right.
But I wonder if when they get to a certain age, their tolerance and metabolization changes like ours does. I assume it does. I don't
I
know.
assume too, but you know
Yeah.
what? They don't talk about it
No,
very
they
often,
don't.
at least not well,
No.
maybe not the articles we're reading.
Yeah, yeah. I do want to point you to a really interesting essay that was in the New York Times today, maybe yesterday, by Tressie McMillan Cottom called Dry January is Driving Me to Drink. And it's really about all of the kind of shaming and controlling that goes along with dry January. And I think it's just a very interesting take on it. How sometimes the things that we consider sort of self-help and wellness become ways to judge and
Mm.
shame people, and it becomes personally a control issue, and how it just becomes something other than
The
what
health
it
benefits that
started.
you're looking for and why
Right.
it started, yeah.
Right. And then along with dry January, what I've been seeing a lot of is sober curious
Yeah.
and people who are sober curious. And there's some talk about that in this article as well. Be deciding that you are not going to drink as a moderate drinking person doesn't make you sober curious.
No.
Like being sober is a whole different thing that's attached to addiction and stuff. And so when people are out there saying, well, I'm being sober curious, just say you're doing dry January.
Right, or n you don't even have to say anything.
That's exactly
Just
right.
maybe have a little bit, right? I say it because it is
Right.
this whole cultural thing,
Right.
but, when I mean, when I ran the marathon, I didn't drink for almost a year,
Right.
and I just didn't drink,
Right.
and you just don't drink, and that's
Right.
fine too.
And there's no shame. There should be
There
no shame or judgment
right.
around it. And if you feel like you need to present as if you're having a drink, have a tonic water and lime.
Yep.
It looks like a gin and tonic, you know? I I I I would never feel like I was in a situation where I needed to drink to fit in,
Yeah.
but I know that that is the way it is with some
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And so I think we need to be conscious about that and not judgy and
Right, and in our 20s, when somebody didn't drink, you were like, "Ooh, are you pregnant?"
yeah. Yeah, nobody's
That's
gonna
not so
think
much
that
the
now.
case anymore. But if somebody says, "I'll just have a Diet Coke,"
Yeah.
just let them get a Diet Coke and
Yes.
don't jump in with,
Oh, are
"Are
you
you
doing
not
dry
drinking?"
January?
Right,
Yeah.
just let them drink
Yeah,
what they
it's
want,
okay.
and it doesn't have to even be a conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's the other piece. There's that it is the shame, like you're
Yeah.
saying, and you have to explain yourself when really
Yeah.
you just don't want anything, and it doesn't have to be a whole thing.
Yeah.
I know what I feel compelled sometimes to say, "Well, I'm having
Yeah.
and so I don't feel like I'm out of the place, or people aren't like, oh, what's going on with
Yeah.
her?"
Yeah.
So, but right, we need to normalize. Just let
Right.
people drink what they want.
Right. Yeah, I think we need to normalize letting people do what they want.
Yeah.
And also
Well,
we need to I'm very focused on shame lately, and I just we need to knock that off. We
yeah.
need to stop shaming people for what they're doing. And it actually ties into Bravo, which we can talk about later, but there's a stop it. Stop making people feel bad about themselves for what they're doing.
I agree.
Yeah.
People can live their lives.
Yes.
Now, that being said,
Yes.
we went a little deeper into this
Yeah.
because there's so many contradictory
Right.
messages. For a while, we were like, we should have a glass of red wine every night because that's good for heart
Right.
health. And now it
Right.
causes cancer and nobody
Right.
knows. So there's a whole nother piece to this.
Mhm.
And that is this whole thing. The Surgeon General also put out in 2023. And he issued a whole warning and a public health issue on loneliness
Mhm.
and what that is also doing to the length of how long we're living and what our quality of life are, and dementia and
Mhm.
Alzheimer's. And there's that piece too. So there were two articles that I just read, again, in the Atlantic. We get a lot of our articles
Mhm.
apparently this month from the Atlantic. It was it's coming out in the February issue. It's online, The Antisocial Century.
Mhm.
Which was fascinating. It's by Derek Thompson, and it went really in depth on a wide array of varying reasons why we've become a lot more secluded, and it's not just phones. There's a dip in church and civic organization attendance.
Yeah.
There's a lack of investment in public spaces. We're
Mm-hmm.
closing libraries and
Mm-hmm.
community centers instead of investing in building in them.
Mm-hmm.
We have bigger homes, so you're
Mm-hmm.
even more secluded within your home. There's a ton of things in that article. It was incredible. A couple of the things I pulled out from it were that men who watch television spend 7 hours in front of a TV for every hour they spend hanging out with someone outside of their home.
Wow. Wow.
So that, right, this whole masculinity thing, there was a lot of ties between loneliness and what that whole hyper masculine
Mm-hmm.
message is. And then you're connecting through a screen. I say TV, I think you could probably bring in
Just
YouTube and
screens.
all
Yeah.
of the other
Yeah.
screens. And this, as I was talking about my geriatric pets earlier, female pet owners spend more time with their pets than in face-to-face contact with friends of their own species.
Wow.
Right? There's something that is showing, like these were the kinds of statistics that they were pulling out from that, and then went through these reasons why. There's quite a bit that was in there. They talked about we take meetings, we shop, we entertain ourselves. We can watch movies and concerts in our own home almost immediately. And that this is all, we work from home. There's so many
Right.
benefits that we talk about, but there's
Right.
also
Right.
a lot
There's a
of
toll that
a
all of
toll.
that
Yeah.
takes. Yeah.
Unintended consequences sometimes
Yeah.
is a
Well,
lot of
even
that.
think about this. Think of all the places where you used to talk to a checkout person,
Yes.
or when you used to buy shoes and someone brought you the shoes and put the shoes on your feet, or someone pumped your gas for you.
Yeah.
Like all of those things that we used to have interactions with people that we just don't anymore.
We don't even order McDonald's in front of anyone. Even
Right.
inside, you go
Right.
to a screen and they
Right.
just bring it to you. There's
Right.
so many things that
Yeah.
we've lost the ability to just chit chat,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate
Yeah.
because that's where I see some of when the kids were younger. They were terrified to walk up to somebody and ask for, I don't know, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy a pack of gum. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that. That I think the drinking piece
Mm-hmm.
comes into that. So now I'm just sitting at home by myself. I'll just
Mm-hmm.
pour myself, like you said, a glass
Mm-hmm.
of wine or drink a bottle of wine real easily
Mm-hmm.
because I'm watching a movie, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to go to bed. What's the harm? I'm just going to be at my house tomorrow anyways.
Right.
You can kind of see that slippery slope that's
Yeah.
coming with that. Um, but from an empty nest perspective,
Yeah.
and from turning the tables,
Mm-hmm.
the other article in The Atlantic was Americans need to party more. And it made me laugh because heck yes, we should absolutely party more. Do you remember as kids, my parents had bridge, they had progressive dinners, they had like dinner clubs. My parents hosted. I remember we would be sequestered to their bedroom.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Right? You are not allowed to come
Right.
out. We are
Right.
having people over tonight.
Right. Oh, there were constantly people at my house when I was growing
Yeah.
up. And it was also, I mean, I grew up in a small town. We all, um, people would just stop by.
Yes.
People don't stop by anymore.
No, we would have neighborhood block parties.
Uh-huh.
Everything was it was very community focused.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think the lack of community is
Mhm.
one of the things that we were talking about, but I think there's a lot of reasons for that too.
Right. Well, I think the loss of a lot of those institutions that you talked about, church, community groups
Yeah.
that people used to belong to, I think those were places where you made those relationships that were the people that stopped by, or that you
Yeah.
had, you know, people that you belonged to church with were in your dinner club or whatever. And I've tried to bring that back at our church. We have these round table dinners where I match people up, and the people loved it. Like they love that, but somebody has to organize it.
Yes.
People won't organize themselves.
No, that was another piece that kind of came out,
Mhm.
is that everyone wants to attend, but nobody
Right.
wants to do the work to do
Right.
it. But in fact, you have to create those spaces
Right.
and make it.
Well, there was an article couple years ago, and it may have been also Caitlin Flanagan in the Atlantic, and it gave a very interesting take on all of the things. And this is a very kind of specific way of looking at this. All the things we lost when women started working full time. The majority of women started working full time outside the home.
Yeah.
Women were the backbone of organizing school events, helping out at school, organizing church events, helping people in the community. Like, they were working in the home, and then they were doing this community work as well.
Right.
And now most women you can't expect women to continue to do all of that community work while we're also having full-time jobs and working in our homes as well.
Right. And making sure that we're exercising, and making
Right.
sure that we're getting enough protein, and
Right.
making sure that our families are
Right.
like our parents, all the things
Right.
that go into that.
And we used to have a social structure that provided for that, in that there were more school events where all the families could come, and there were more community events where there's not time and money for
No.
those things anymore.
No.
And I blame Ronald Reagan for that.
You're going way back.
Right. But I mean, I do, because I think that it was an ethos that started back then, that the people who are younger than us, our kids, don't realize what we've lost in the last 40 or so years.
Yeah.
What we used to have. And not all of it was good by any means.
No.
There was a lot of things there were a lot of things going on that we don't want to have now, but there are a lot of other things, sort of safety nets in communities, that aren't there anymore. And we're all suffering because of it.
Yeah.
Not to make it political, but
No.
it always is.
And I think that there was, when we were growing up, we were terrified we were going to get kidnapped. That was a big thing that, so parents started to pull their kids from that free range, I'm using
Right.
quotes, there, but that started, you're starting to pull your kids into the home more.
Right.
And they're becoming part of structured things instead of playing with
Right.
people in those communities.
Right.
I think gun violence in schools is a
Absolutely.
big thing. It makes you, not just schools, but concerts, and it seems
Yeah.
like any big event, you're scared.
You're
I think
worried.
that's really
Right.
there's a lot of constructs that are happening
Right.
that are keeping us inside, and it's been growing and growing
Yeah.
since then. So
Yeah. Well, that's depressing.
I know. So
Makes me want to drink.
I know. Exactly. So my challenge
Mhm.
for the two of us,
Mhm.
and especially because we don't have kids at home,
Mhm.
and kids can keep us entertained
Mhm.
and busy,
Mhm.
is that we have to host 2 events this year.
Oh, okay.
So it's manageable.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a drinking party.
Okay.
Even though I think we give ourselves permission that if you want to host a cocktail party, host a cocktail party. It doesn't have to go, even if you're going to get cancer. But I feel like we drink like a credit card worth of plastic in our water every year.
Right.
So everything's giving us cancer.
Right.
I'm being aloof about this right
Right.
now, but we know it's serious.
Right. Right. So, okay. Yeah.
You've already done one.
No, that wasn't in this
Oh.
year, though.
Yeah. So we've got to plan independent. Well, maybe we do our joint party, but
Let's not count that one.
no. So there were I found a really fun reel on
Mhm.
Instagram that talked about some adult party themes.
Okay.
Okay. So a cafe at home. So you have pastries and coffee.
Oh, okay.
A jardy, which is a party with jeans. So everyone shows up in denim, and it's kind of funny. A mocktail party right? Because we don't have to always be doing that. A soda soiree. So
Okay.
if we wanted to be the Mormon ladies, we could do a soda soiree. Let them eat cake. So everybody brings different kinds of cakes. It's just kind of fun things.
Well, I already told you about the one that I want to do.
Which one?
Casserole
Oh,
night.
yes, you did say about
Yeah.
casserole.
So
Right,
this is what,
exactly.
right. So this is what we're going to do in the dead of winter, which will be in the next couple of weeks, I guess. Everybody brings their favorite casserole,
Yeah,
and it has to have a minimum of one canned soup in the ingredients.
right? Cream of mushroom, cream of
Right, cream
chicken,
cream
cream
of
of
celery,
celery.
whatever it is, but everybody bring your favorite casserole recipe. And yes, is that going to help cause cancer? Probably
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
But I mean,
But
why
also
not?
you get the benefits of socializing. So
Right.
that's the hard part. Where do you balance all of this?
Right.
And I think that it's, as we always say, it's always about
It
moderation.
always is about moderation, and we just need to be less judgy, less shamey, less drinky, less soupy.
Right? And figure out ways to socialize face to face.
Right.
And encourage your husbands or partners or
Right.
the men in your life, sons that are
Yeah,
our
because
age, to go
sometimes
out
they just
too.
aren't really that social.
No,
But
no.
you know what? Part of it is, and I think we both have husbands that are like this. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. When they get out there and do it,
Oh,
they enjoy it.
of course they do.
They both of our husbands love to talk to people.
Yeah.
They just don't want to kind of get off their ass and get out there and do it.
Yeah.
And so we need to encourage that as well. So, okay.
So, empty nesters, we want to hear how you all are going to plan at
Right.
least two social. It can be, and I think it said it has to be 10 people
Oh, 10 or
or
more.
more
Okay.
for a party.
Right.
That's what they're considering a party. So 10 is doable in
Yeah, 10
almost
is doable.
any house, right?
Right.
So, and don't count like Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
This is something that you're bringing friends and people
And it
in.
doesn't have to be in your house
It doesn't have to be in your
either.
house either.
Just invite your friends out for pizza. Let's just go have pizza, you know?
Right.
Let's just go do whatever.
Yep. Send a text. It can be last minute, but
Yeah.
just, or do a formal
Sometimes I
invitation.
think the last minute ones are the best ones
Yeah,
too, because nobody expects it. Nobody has any like expectations. And then it's always more fun than you think it's going to be.
Exactly. And when it's planned in advance, something always comes up
Yeah.
that you have to
Yeah.
prioritize
Yeah.
working or whatever that is. And it's last minute. You're like, yeah, I'm in a great mood. Let's
All
do
right,
that.
let's do it.
So, yes.
We are going to start here in conquering the loneliness crisis.
Yeah. And
Empty
it
nesters.
takes you to create you, and I'm talking to myself. You as a person have to create what that is. So it takes a lot of work and planning. You don't get to just show up. You have to do the work, and you'll find it's a lot easier than you think.
And nobody cares if your house isn't perfectly clean. Nobody cares if the food isn't. Have everybody else bring food. People like to do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. We have a fancy friend who has a periodic fancy holiday party. And one year I just brought buckets of chicken from Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it was a winner.
Yes.
You know, she's like, oh, everybody brought some kind of fancy. Somebody brought like specially made sushi. And I was like, chicken for the win. And it was great. Everybody was thrilled.
I was going to say it probably went the fastest.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's about being together. It's not about all the other stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. Do that if you enjoy it, but don't feel like that pressure is there.
Right. Right.
And also what I started doing is have people bring what they want to drink. So you don't
Right.
have to supply, if you are going to have drinks for everyone, say bring your own, no matter what it is. And that way it's a lot easier on you and you're not trying to figure out
Right.
what all that can
Yep.
be. So
Okay. Let's do it, everybody. Let's get out there. Let's be social.
yes, even in the winter.
Even in the
Maybe it's a
winter.
good time to push yourself in the winter.
Yeah, I think it is. Because otherwise you can just put your jammies on when you get home from work.
I
and
know.
spend the whole night curled up on the sofa with your dog.
Right? They are nice to us, even if they're having health issues. Anyways, should we move on?
Yes, let's move on. What are we going to talk about now?
Okay, so this will come out in another week, but we are still in the midst of the wildfires in California. And there were hurricanes on the East Coast this year. And it made us really, Amy and I talked a little bit, like we especially in the Midwest, do not plan for evacuations or quick leaving. It's just
No.
not something that happens. Even if it floods here,
Right.
it's still not the same.
Right. And where we live, our major weather events are going to be an ice storm
Yep.
where the power might go out, but we haven't had that,
Since the
yeah,
90s.
for a while. We had a
90,
stretch there.
80s? Yeah, we used to
Yeah.
have quite a bit.
Um, big snow, and then you get to decide whether you want to go out or not in that. We do have tornadoes
Yep.
here, and we've had fairly significant tornadoes in our area in the past.
I would say in the last 5 years, we've had pretty close calls,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. So that's something. But when we have a tornado warning, we just go in our basements and wait it out.
Right, because it could be down the street, so there's no time to do anything.
Right, right. So we're watching all of this happening in California and seeing the devastation and seeing these people who aren't prepared to leave their homes and wondering what do we save? What are the things that we put in our go bag or
Right,
whatever?
your evacuation
Yeah.
bag? Yeah.
So I have to tell you, and I may have told you this story before, but Joe's mom moved to Florida many years ago. She's a Midwesterner. So she moves down to the Tampa area, and she hadn't been there very long. And her area was evacuated for hurricane. And Joe's brother lived farther inland, and he wasn't evacuated. So he said, I'll come pick you up, get your stuff together,
Right.
and I will come get you and bring you to our house. So she got herself ready. She got her cardigan and her cigarettes,
Mhm.
and she was ready to go. And Paul came and he said, Mom, you're evacuating because you may never see your stuff again.
Yeah.
You need to pack what you can't live without. And I've got cigarettes,
Right, that's an easy thing we can get.
Right. But he was like, and she was like, oh, she hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And I have a friend at work whose daughter lives in LA. She lives in Burbank. And her daughter's like, well, one of my friends, she hasn't had to evacuate, but she was like, one of my friends is going to drive to wherever. And I thought I'd just ride along with her. And my friend, Annie, is like, no, if you're going to leave, you need to take your car with you and
Right.
anything that you value because you don't know if you're going to be able to come back. But we don't think that way.
No.
So I was thinking, like, what are the things that I would want to keep? And what has kind of struck me as I've watched all of this happening in California is maybe the things aren't that important.
I know. I actually talked with Rick about this.
Yeah.
And we kind of made a list of what we would
Yeah.
like if you had 5 minutes to
Right.
leave. Do you want me to read my list? Do you
Yeah,
want to
go
go
ahead.
yours? Okay. Medications,
Yeah.
right? That I think about that. We're not on a lot of medications, but right, I'm on a thyroid pill
Yeah.
and
But even if you couldn't get that, you could still go
I
to
could
your
s-
pharmacy and
yes.
say, like, yeah.
Yep. All of those critical documents,
Yeah.
birth certificates, passports. Rick was like computers.
Yeah.
Everything that all of our passwords, all of our
Yeah.
accounts are on our computers. So your computers with their chargers.
Yeah.
I didn't say our kids and pets, but
Yeah.
that's a given. But dog food, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a quick thing, you got to grab that because that's not as easy.
Yeah.
And then any photos, that's a little bit of I have photos from before Facebook was a big thing.
Right.
And then I don't have photos.
Right.
And then we don't invest in art.
Yeah.
I don't have nice jewelry.
Yeah.
I don't have anything like that. So it would be some of the photos on the wall. And then I
Yeah.
think we would just go.
Yeah. I as I thought about it, I really thought, like, there's not really, if I had 10, 15 minutes, yes, I would get computers. I don't even know about, like, photo albums. I'm not a photo album person.
Yeah.
Like, fortunately for my children, my mother has made photo albums for them of
Yeah.
significant life events because I don't do that stuff.
No. Oh, mine
And
are in a big box. I mean, it's
right,
not
that's what I
together.
have, a big box
Uh-huh.
of all of the photos from before we started taking pictures on our phones.
Yep.
The one thing I did think of that I think I need to do is at least take pictures of birth certificates, social security cards,
Oh, yeah.
and keep them on my phone. at least to have
That's
that.
smart. Yeah. Or on some sort of cloud
Right.
folder.
Right. But so much of that stuff is already in the cloud
Mhm.
that I don't, if even if I didn't have my computer, I think I would be able to access the things that I need. I have a ring that is a diamond that my grandfather bought himself to make a tie pin that then he gave to my grandmother as an engagement ring that my mom made into a necklace and then she made into a ring for me. And so,
That would be
yeah,
something to
that
grab.
would be one I would want to keep. And then I also have a charm bracelet that
Oh, I love
actually,
that charm
yeah.
bracelet of yours, yeah.
So those are things, but if I didn't have it, it wouldn't be the end of the
I
world.
know.
And I guess I think it made me think about all the things in my house that like it
It's just
it's
stuff.
just stuff. And the most important thing is that you have the pets, the I shouldn't say it in that order.
I
The
know.
children, the pets.
Well, the children don't really live here,
Right,
right?
right.
So it's a little
So,
different.
yeah, I mean, yeah. And it's really interesting to think about all those people who just suddenly don't have their lives. Everything,
Yeah,
the record of their lives is
is
gone.
gone. Right, and you think about that, but at the same time, not having a home base.
Yeah,
And that's where the hurricanes and the fires
yeah,
and,
yeah,
even tornadoes,
yeah,
if or
yeah.
individual house fire, like, you
Yes.
just don't have any place to go, and
Well,
that is I
and
can't
think
imagine.
about what that does to a community. I
Mhm.
mean, those places where children have lost their homes and their schools.
Yeah, everything.
How
Their
does that work?
churches,
Yeah, yeah,
if they're
churches.
right, all of even the things we're holding on to in community are gone.
Right.
So we are
Yeah,
thinking about everybody in California,
yeah.
and
It's
I
devastating.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And what I think is an interesting thing to think about is that we see, oh, um, Adam Brody and what's his wife's name?
Sienna Miller.
No,
No, no?
no. Anyway,
Yeah,
all those celebrity couples that have
yeah,
lost their homes and all that stuff. But think about this. Think about the people. Altadena was a community that during the Great Migration and during the Jim Crow era, you as an African American family could get a bank loan to buy a house there. And so it was a very diverse and primarily African American community that had had those homes for generations,
yeah.
and it's all gone. Or think about the people, all of these celebrities lost their Malibu beach houses, and that's awful.
Right,
But the people that worked for them, the people
right.
that cleaned those houses, the people that took care of those yards, the people that
Yeah.
took care of those pools that don't have any
Their income even.
right.
Maybe their house is still there,
Maybe
but
their
their
house is
income
still there,
is
but how are they going to pay their mortgage when they can't
right.
pay for this stuff?
Exactly.
It's a lot. So, it's so cliche to say thoughts and prayers, but find out what you can do to
Right.
help those people. There are a lot of resources on Instagram. There are a lot of resources available. Whatever you can do to help. And, think about the people. Can you imagine if you had an infant and you lost your home
No,
and you have to leave without diapers, without formula? Like, how do you even do that?
I know.
So fill up those diaper banks, fill up those formula banks, whatever we can do to help. Let's try to do it.
Yep. Yep. We'll
Yeah.
keep looking, and maybe what we can do is post some
Yeah.
opportunities to help. The Red Cross is obviously
Yeah.
one that's been around a long time, that's reputable. We
Yeah.
also, I think that we're in an era you want to make sure that you're with a
Yep.
reputable place that is actually going to
Absolutely.
give the money to where they say. So
Yeah.
we'll look into that and try to
Post
post
some stuff.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
oh, well, should we talk about our cheers
Our
for the
cheers
week?
to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my cheers to that for this week kind of goes along with that a little bit. But one thing that I love in life is a really good funeral. And I know you all know how I feel about Jimmy Carter, one of our best presidents, one of our best people, really. Whether he was a great president or not is debatable, but he was a great human being.
Yeah.
And his funeral was fantastic. And I used to love the idea of weddings, and I'm not so much into that anymore because weddings are so performative and about like showing who we think we are. And funerals are about who that person really was.
Yeah.
And I really love a good funeral. And Jimmy Carter's funeral was a real good one.
It
So
was
cheers to
good.
that.
His
His
grandson's
grandson was
eulogy
great.
was
Yes.
incredible.
Well, and the fact that they had Walter Mondale and Gerald Ford's sons read the eulogies their fathers wrote was
Yeah.
really breathtaking.
Yeah.
So, cheers to good funerals.
Yes.
And sometimes I think about, what do I want at my funeral? And then I think, it doesn't matter. I won't be there. But
But Amy, we know that you're going to plan your funeral.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, mine is a little bit
Uh-huh.
less I don't know, sentimental.
Okay.
It kind of goes with the theme of what we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah.
I just saw that there's a new generation out
Mhm.
there. It's called the Goonies generation.
Mm.
People born from 1970 to 1985
Well, that's us.
are the Goonies generation. And here's why.
Okay.
We played outside all day.
Yeah.
We rode bikes everywhere.
I did.
Everywhere.
I did not because I lived out in the country.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a big hill. So I didn't ride my bike everywhere. And I didn't play outside. I sat outside and read my book.
Yeah. Aw. Did you look at clouds and make shapes and say what they were?
Not really. I was just reading a book.
Okay.
And that's why I will have to have cataract surgery 10 years before all of my peers. But that's okay. It was worth it.
Yeah. You liked reading is a good thing.
Yes.
So we came home when the street light came.
Mhm.
When the street light came, I can't even say that. When the street lights came on,
Mhm.
we didn't have phones or social media.
Right.
We don't really have supervision.
Right.
So that was the Goonie
I like that.
generation. It's kind of Gen X.
Yeah. But it's
summed
more,
up.
it's a smaller contingent
Yeah.
of Gen X, which is exactly who we are.
Right? We're sort of later Gen X.
Yeah.
And into that Zennial. Even Lizzie
Mhm.
was like, hey, that's me. So
Mhm.
even though she's technically a millennial,
Mhm.
there is that crossover.
Mhm. I like that.
Looks like
the Goonies generation.
Yeah, because Goonies never say die.
Right.
That is the movie of our generation, right?
I
Isn't
love
that?
the Goonies.
Well, there's probably a lot of them, but it is a definite
Yeah.
cult classic.
I
So
took
that's
the
my cheers
kids
to
to
that.
see that at the drive-in. Was it during the pandemic? I feel like it was. Yes, it was a whole bunch of kids, and the drive-in is about 45 minutes. I was driving because none of them had licenses yet,
Right.
and we had to drive with the windows open so that we wouldn't get COVID.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh. Even though they were together probably
Right.
all the
They
time
were
anyways.
literally, this was when Bess was friends with a whole bunch of boys, and it was all boys and Bess. And they were, I told the moms, like, we'll drive there with the windows open. We're going to be outside the whole time. They were like, I don't have boys, so I don't know how boys are, but now I do. They were lying on top of each other in the
Uh-huh.
back of the car. They were wrestling. Like, if anybody did have COVID, they were getting it. But we saw Goonies and Lost Boys.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a drive-in.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. See, you could host a movie night and watch Goonies and
yeah.
The Lost Boys.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a fun thing
That
to
would be
do.
fun.
Right? With all your girlfriends and
Yeah.
relive all the
Yeah.
not
Or
just
we could do
girlfriends.
Pretty in Pink.
Oh yeah. Because
And
we talked a lot about that.
Yeah. Breakfast Club,
Uh-huh.
16
Oh, I
Candles.
like it. A little
Okay.
Molly Ringwald. We can
Yeah.
dress up as our favorite characters.
Oh my God. Yes.
Okay, it's all coming together.
Yes.
Take inspiration from us and keep building on it and let us know.
Okay, we got to do Bravo winners and losers.
Yes. Okay.
Because there's, again, so much Bravo content out there, and we love to talk about Bravo. And so we're going to talk about it on our podcast.
Yep.
And if you don't like it, just turn it off right now. We loved having you here. It was great, but we're going to talk about Bravo. So do you want to do yours first? I didn't
Sure.
put mine in the document, so you don't know who they are.
I'll go first then.
Okay.
Okay, so my winner is just Mary Cosby from Salt Lake City. She is hilarious. She's had her ups and downs.
Yes.
It was I have never actually shed a tear ever
Yeah.
with Housewife,
Uh-huh.
but when there was a conversation with her and her son right
Yeah.
before he went into rehab, and it was so emotional and real, and she was they were both like
Yeah.
incredibly brave to keep that and and allow that to be part of the conversation. And I think it's shaped who she is. And it was just thank you to Mary Cosby for putting something so vulnerable on
Yeah.
television.
Yeah. And it's very interesting because she's been from the very beginning a very different sort of person in the Bravo sphere, real wacky, kind of doing her own thing. And having the conversation that she did with her son about his addiction was really, it made me think about her in a very different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yes,
And
she's
she's still showing up to work.
right.
Some of them,
And
when they
she's
have a
still a
bad
little weird.
yeah, right, she's still herself.
Right.
There's a whole lot of things that probably make her weird, but for
Yeah.
that, she keeps showing up.
Yeah.
She's showing up for her son.
Yeah.
She showed
Yeah.
unconditional love,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
so she's my winner.
Yeah, I agree with that. Who's your loser?
Uba from New York.
So you watched last
I
night's
watched
episode.
last night's episode.
Wow. I
I,
think I might be done with Real Housewives of New York
I it
unless
was
something changes next
yeah.
season.
Honestly, it was like that nobody could say anything and she flew off the handle. And I think that we probably all know somebody in our life like that. I
Mhm.
don't want to see it on television.
Mm-mm.
That you
Mm-mm.
can't say anything and they're all of a sudden, oh, you're doing such the martyrness of it, the
Mhm.
judgment of all of it. That doesn't need to be it's not entertaining for me.
No.
Let's just put it that way. And
No.
some of it is crazy and we talk about that all the time and it's screaming, but it was over the top and it should not be that way. I
Yeah.
know next week is the finale
Yeah.
and Watch What Happens Live. I don't know if you heard them talking about it. They said it's one of the darkest episodes of Housewives history because this fight continues into
Wow. Well, I've
next
not
episode.
been impressed with this season.
Mm-mm.
I don't think that I think I told Joe last night because of course he's in the room while I'm watching it and then he says, "I don't know why I'm watching this. I can never understand what they're talking about and even if I did, I wouldn't really care." And I'm like, "Well, nobody said you had to be here."
Right?
But I'm not sure that the Real Housewives as it is sustainable.
I agree.
I think they tried to do this new franchise with these new people. I think that it's not authentic anymore.
No.
I think people know how it works and so they self-produce and I think I always read Brian Moylan's recaps in Vulture
Yep.
and his recap of the last night's episode of Real Housewives of New York was a lot of maybe the reason that the rest of the ladies were so reticent to talk about anything was because they knew that Uba was going to fly off the handle
Yeah.
no matter what. So maybe if Uba's not there, it changes the dynamic. But at this point, I'm not really interested
No.
in hanging out with those folks
No.
anymore.
It's
So
why I stopped watching OC for the
yeah,
same reasons.
yeah,
Right? Shannon or Tamara would fly off the
yeah,
handle and it was like, well, nobody can even say anything.
yeah,
It's not worth it. It's not entertaining.
yeah. I got back into OC. I took off some time from OC because I couldn't stand oh, what was her name?
Kelly.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kelly Dodd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I got back into that. But also Tamara just sends me around the bend.
Yeah.
Okay. So my winners and losers.
Yes, please.
My winner is Heather Gay.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you watched. Oh, yeah. I was Salt Lake City last week. Heather has this very unique place where she is of the housewives, but a little bit outside the housewives.
She's the voice of
Yes.
the audience.
Yes. And she is killing it with that. And when she took Meredith around her room looking for a listening device.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. Sure, let's look for a listening device.
Yes.
Right, because
And-
somebody planted that in here.
Right. And you know that she had her tongue firmly planted in her cheek. And I don't know if Meredith was catching on or not. Meredith is a little out there.
Yeah.
But she is hilarious. And I love, like you said, she's the voice of the audience.
Yeah.
And she's fantastic. And I think she brings just a perspective and a character that no other really of the franchises has.
No. No, it used to be Bethany
Yeah.
until she kind of
Lost
lost it.
Yeah, you're right. Back in the old days, it was
Yes,
Bethany.
Bethany was the voice of the audience and
Yeah.
really kind of was the narrator
Yeah.
almost. I feel like, what's her name on Southern Charm? Madison is
Yeah.
sort of the narrator
She's
like
sort of
Cam
taken
used to
over the
be.
camera. Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
And Giselle is a little bit
Yeah, I would
on
say that.
Potomac,
Mhm.
but my loser of the week, and it's actually from last week, but it continued this week too, is Mia
Oh,
on Potomac
yeah,
because she just didn't seem all that concerned that her children weren't where she left them.
right.
So she went on this trip to Panama. Is that where
Yes,
they went?
Panama
They went to
City.
Panama.
Yeah,
And she left her kids with her husband that she's in the midst of breaking up with, who she said, oh, he's bipolar and he's dangerous or whatever. She left the kids with him. He dumped them off with some relatives in Virginia.
yeah,
And for a minute, she was really concerned about it, but then she realized where they were. And then when they were leaving Panama, she wasn't going to Virginia to get the kids. She was going to Atlanta to be with her boyfriend.
yeah.
So Mia, no,
Mm-mm,
no.
mm-mm.
And then also Whitney.
We're just gonna keep going back to
My
Whitney and
perpetual loser.
Southern
Oh,
Charm.
and I'm just going to add another one, Kyle. I'm so tired of
Yeah.
Kyle. I am so tired of if you aren't in Kyle's camp and thinking and doing exactly what Kyle wants you to do, she yells at you and then she cries.
Yep. I haven't watched the last 2 episodes
Oh, well,
because
you
of
need to
that,
watch them
because
because
I know.
the one coming up next week is Kyle losing it on everybody.
Okay.
So those are our Bravo winners and losers.
Yeah, I like this. That gives
Yeah.
us a little bit of a recap, but doesn't have to go into all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, if you don't like Bravo,
Yeah.
sorry.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
It's our podcast. Get your own.
So any last thoughts? Any last things you want to bring?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything.
Right. This was good.
Yeah.
I have one.
Okay.
I've noticed we seem to have a large contingency of listeners in Singapore.
Wow.
So I just want to say welcome to all of our Singapore listeners.
Huh.
It's
Do we know anybody in Singapore?
No.
No.
Lizzie went to Singapore, but I don't think that
she
is the case.
Spend the whole time promoting the podcast?
Right, unless it's some sort of bot, but it could be.
Yeah.
But it's pretty high up there in our listenership.
Interesting.
So,
Well,
yeah. So, welcome Singapore.
yes. Welcome, Singapore. And welcome all of you that have joined us recently.
Yeah.
We love having you here. We love that you spend your time with us. It's really a joy. And I look forward to doing this every week.
Me too. Me too. It's like our therapy.
It really is. Listening to last week's episode, I was like, oh, okay, we don't have to pay for therapy. We're just doing it
Exactly. Right?
So
We kind of did tonight, reliving what we remember and then, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for letting us talk through our issues right
Week
here.
after week.
And again, email us because we will read your email on the air, especially you Singapore people. Tell us why you're listening to us. Or tell us why you hate that we talk about Bravo, or tell us how upset you are about how much we talk about drinking, or tell us what a great thing you are doing in your life that you want to share. Tell us. We'll read it.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
And that's info@emptynesthappyhour.com.
That's correct. You did it.
I did it. So thank you for joining us. Thanks, of course, to producer Aunt Lizzie. Don't forget you can contact us on all the social media and at the email. Tell us what's going on. Give us your dry January or wet January drink recommendations. And we will talk to you again next week.
Yes.
Cheers.